Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for a very specific sonic journey.
A very deep one.
Yeah, we're going right into the sound that has just taken over global dance floors for the last few years. We're talking about modern, dark, driving tech house.
That hypnotic, repetitive groove, the deep subs, the almost surgically precise mixing.
And we're not just talking theory here, are we?
No, not at all. The sources we've pulled are basically a producer's blueprint. It's a masterclass that breaks down the exact mixing workflow from the top artists. We're talking ARTBAT, Green Velvet, Fisher, Vintage Culture.
Patrick copying, yeah.
All of them. We're essentially reverse engineering their sound.
So our mission today is super practical. We want to unpack the secrets to getting mixes that are minimal, but also deep and punchy. Mixes that sound ready to go right to the top of the Beatport charts.
Exactly. And if you've ever had that feeling where your track sounds great in your headphones, but just sort of falls apart in a club, this is the technical blueprint you need to fix that foundation.
Okay, so let's get into this blueprint.
Yeah.
We have to start with the core philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Because the tech house, it's almost more about what you don't do.
That's the perfect way to put it.
The big mantra here is, well, it's simple. Less is more.
Yes.
If you take away just one thing today, it's that this genre is about groove and space, not a dense wall of sound.
Yeah.
You have to actively fight that urge to fill everything up.
You really do. And to get that space, you need 5 key sonic characteristics. They all have to live together in perfect harmony.
Okay, what are they?
First, a deep, punchy kick. It has to be dead center, mono, and loud. Second, a rolling bass line that is just heavily sidechained to that kick. That relationship is everything.
And then the high end is kept pretty minimal but wide.
Exactly. That's number 3. Minimal percussion. We're talking shakers, crisp claps, maybe some subtle hats, not huge, complex drum fills that are fighting for your attention. Fourth is your atmospheric pads. They need to be super wide, filtered, drenched in reverb, and sitting way in the background. And then finally, number 5, you have your processed rhythmic vocal chops that kind of cut through the top of the mix.
So to make sure those 5 things don't just become a mess, the sources lay out this really radical frequency allocation strategy. This is where the space really comes from.
It's fascinating. It's this deliberate, almost surgical avoidance of frequency clutter. So you have the SUB range, that's like 20 to 60 hertz. That is reserved strictly for the kick and the sub bass, and it has to be mono.
Crucially mono.
Non-negotiable. Then the LAW range, 60 to 250 hertz, that's where you get the body of the kick and the fundamental of the bass.
But then comes this huge gap in the middle. This is the part that I think sounds so weird to new producers, but it's the core of the whole thing.
It is. It's the mud avoidance strategy. That critical range from about 250 to 500 hertz, the low mids, it's intentionally and aggressively minimized.
Why?
Because that's where all the boxiness, the warmth, and frankly, all the sonic sludge lives. By carving that out, the whole mix just feels lighter, cleaner. It gives the low-end thump and the high-end sparkle room to breathe.
So if you're trying to get that Patrick topping sound, you have to think of 250 to 500 hertz as like a no-fly zone.
A total no-fly zone. The void is the point. It creates contrast. You subtract those boxy frequencies so that when the kick hits at, say, 70 hertz, it just punches through without blurring into anything else.
Which brings us right to phase 1, nailing the low end. Because honestly, if the low end isn't perfect in tech house, the whole track is just dead on arrival.
It's the engine, no question, and it's the biggest challenge. So let's start with the kick drum to get that real thump.
Okay.
The EQ chain is really specific. First, you high pass at 30 to 35 hertz. You don't want that deep sub-bass rumble. You want focused impact.
And then comes the thump itself. This is the money move.
Right. This is the money move. A crucial, tight boost, somewhere between 60 and 80 hertz. We're talking +2, maybe +4 decibels. And the key technical detail here is the Q factor.
Right, how wide the boost is.
Exactly. You want it tight, around 1.5. This concentrates all that energy into a punch, not a big boomy rumble. This is what hits you in the chest.
And that keeps it from spilling over into the bass's territory.
Precisely. After that, you cut at 200 to 300 hertz takeout, 2 or 3 dB to remove that boxiness we just talked about. And finally, a little high-frequency boost, 3 to 5 kilohertz for the click, the sound of the beater. That helps it cut through.
So you have the low thump and the high click. That separation is key. What about compression?
Compression is tight, a 4.1 ratio, but, and this is important, a relatively slow attack. About 10 milliseconds.
Why slow?
So that initial transient, the very start of the kick, punches through before the compressor clamps down on it, keeps it snappy. Then a fast release, 100 milliseconds, and you're aiming for maybe 3 or 4 decibels of gain reduction.
And for that extra modern weight, the sources mention saturation.
Yeah, saturation is basically, controlled, pleasant-sounding distortion. A tool like SoundToy's Decapitator is great here. It adds these rich harmonics that make the kick feel louder and fuller without actually raising the peak volume.
And the goal, like in Fisher's Losing It, is a kick that just feels perfect.
It just hits you.
Yeah. Okay, now for the bass. This is where the whole philosophy of making room really comes into play, isn't it?
This step defines the whole genre. For the bass EQ, first, high pass it at 40 Hz, leave the absolute lowest of lows for the kick, then you have to do the subtraction.
The big cut.
The big cut.
Yeah.
At 60 to 80 Hz, the exact same place you boosted the kick, you make a deep cut on the bass. -3, -5 decibels. You are carving out a hole for that kick thump.
Okay, let's pause on that. That's a huge cut. I mean, you're taking out the fundamental energy of the bass right where the kick hits. Doesn't that risk making the bass sound thin or hollow on a big club system?
That's a great question. And the trick is twofold. Sidechaining, which we'll get to, and harmonics. Yes, you're taking out that low-end clash, but you immediately boost the bass fundamental a bit higher, around 100 to 120 Hertz.
Ugh.
And then, crucially, you add another boost around 500 to 800 Hertz. That makes sure the bass harmonics can be heard on smaller speakers, like laptops or phones that can't even reproduce the subfrequencies.
So you're sacrificing a little bit of pure low-end mass for incredible definition.
That's it. You sculpt it.
Wow.
And then you high pass everything above 5 kilohertz on the bass because it's just noise up there.
Right, and standard compression on the bass.
Standard compression first, yeah. Keep it tight. At 6.1 ratio, fast attack, get about 4 to 6 dB of gain reduction, so the level is super consistent.
But the real magic, the thing that makes you want to dance, is the sidechain compression.
This is where you cannot be shy. You add a second compressor to the bass, but this one is triggered by the kick. The ratio needs to be aggressive. 8.1. The attack, instant. 1 millisecond. And the release is what creates that audible pumping feel. Set it around 150 milliseconds.
And the target gain reduction is pretty extreme, 6 to 10 decibels.
It is extreme. You are literally pulling the bass completely out of the way for a split second, but that release time is fast enough that it springs right back, creating this rhythmic vacuum.
So you're not just making room, you're defining the groove with silence.
You're defining the groove with silence. That's it. The bass should duck and duck hard every single time that kick hits.
Wow. Okay, that's phase one, and the result is this huge grooving low end where the kick and bass work in shifts.
Exactly. So that moves us to phase two. Drums, crispness, and width. The foundation is locked in. Now the percussion has to be super defined and wide.
Starting with claps and snares. So we're high passing them pretty high, up at 150, 200 hertz to keep them out of that low-mid mud zone.
All the way out. Then you cut a little at 400 hertz for boxiness, and then boost the snap at 2 kilohertz and the air at 8 kilohertz.
And compression.
The sources recommend a vintage optical style. It's just a bit smoother, more organic, a 4.1 ratio, but with a super fast 1 millisecond attack to catch that initial transient snap.
Okay, now for hi-hats. The big rule here is they should never, ever be in the center of the mix.
Never. Tech House relies on the stereo field for its sense of space. So for hats, you high pass everything below 300 hertz. Get rid of all of it. Then you boost around 8 to 10K for brightness.
And just how wide are we pushing them?
We're pushing them far out. Use a stereo utility plugin and set the width to 120, maybe even 140%. These have to feel like they're surrounding you.
Like that.
And you can add a little subtle ping pong delay, maybe a 116th note mixed in really low, like 15%, just for a bit of movement between the speakers.
And for all the other percussion, shakers and congas and things.
Same idea. High pass aggressively, up at 400 hertz. Focus on boosting their character between 1 and 4 kilohertz, add a short reverb, and then pan them hard left and right. Maximize that width.
So everything is in the side channels, minimal in the center,
Yeah.
except for the kick and sub.
That controlled placement is key. And that brings us to phase 3, the melodic elements and the final polish. And the role here is atmosphere, not aggression. They sit in the back.
For synth leads or plucks, the EQ strategy is, again, all about subtraction.
Yeah.
High pass at 300 or 400 hertz, leave that bass territory completely clear.
Right. And you might even scoop the mid-range, 800 hertz to 2K, just to make room for vocals or the main clap. Then boost presence a little at 3 to 4K.
And the compression is light on these.
Very light, 2.1 ratio, maybe a slow attack of 30 milliseconds. They're just supporting the groove, they're not driving it.
And to get that wide ARTBAT style melodic feel, we're using wide stereo imaging again.
Yeah, 130 to 150% width and a nice medium plate reverb. Maybe a 2 or 3 second decay time raced in at about 20 to 40%. It's wide, but it's still defined.
Now for the pads and atmosphere. These are what give the track that hypnotic quality.
And they should be felt, not really heard. So you cut from 500 hertz to 1K to keep them out of the center and boost 10K and above for air. And volume has to be low. It should just be texture.
And how do you create that sense of movement over, say, an 8-minute track, that slow breathing feeling?
Automation. You put an auto filter, a low pass filter on the pad, and you just automate the cutoff frequency very, very slowly over 8 or 16 bars. It makes the background evolve.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, and you couple that with a really long, lush reverb, a hall reverb with a 4 to 6 second decay, and a very wet mix, 50 to 70%.
And I'm guessing maximum width again, 150 to 200%.
Maximum width. They are purely for the side channels for that spatial quality.
And finally, vocal chops.
Quick one on these. High pass at 200 hertz, boost presence at 3 to 5K, use a quarter note delay and a 2-second plate reverb to give them some dimension.
And they also get sidechained, but a lot lighter than the bass.
Much lighter, just enough to tuck them into the rhythm. A 4.1 ratio, just ducking the vocal by maybe 3 to 5 decibels. It's just a little nudge from the kick.
So to wrap this up for everyone applying this blueprint, we've got 3 huge phases.
Right.
First, locking in that low end with radical subtraction.
Second, creating crisp, wide drums with aggressive panning and high passing. And third, making sure those atmospheric melodic elements stay out of the way.
And the core takeaway, the whole philosophy, is groove over density, space over clutter, minimal over maximal. You are literally carving things out to make the important stuff hit harder. The power is in the negative space.
It's so interesting how much of this workflow is about what not to do. It's not about layering. It's about tearing things down until only the essential pieces are left.
Which I think leads to a really interesting question for you, the person listening and learning this. Since this whole method is about radical subtraction, the frequency cuts, the aggressive sidechaining, you have to start thinking about how silence and space become key parts of the rhythm itself.
Yeah.
So how can learning the subtractive mixing idea apply to other things? Not just other genres of music, but, other areas of your life where maybe less is actually more. That is something to chew on. As you start applying this, think about your biggest challenge. Is it setting up that really aggressive sidechain? Or is it learning to be brave enough to carve out that 250 to 500 hertz mud zone?
And if you found this workflow useful, the next step is just immediate practice. Don't wait.
For sure. Go load up a reference track, pull up some ARTBAT, some Green Velvet right now, and A/B your mix against it. Apply these exact settings, especially on the low end, and just hear the difference when you create that space.
Get to work and happy mixing. We'll see you on the next deep dive.